to be here. And we had a lot of applications, including one from Germany. So that was exciting, and I got to review them and say who I wanted. Yes, and so yeah, we're happy to. Whoops, that we didn't put enough glue dots on there. So anyway, it's been great having Beth in the community, and we had a wonderful. One of the things that the artists in residence do is they give a workshop, and her workshop that we had selected to do was these mobiles, art mobiles. Although most people's look different than this because we used, I've had a couple different people who bring us old jewelry. And I use metal jewelry in my sculptures, but some of it's not what I would use. But we do a lot of kid stuff, and I thought, oh, we'll use it someday. Well, boy, did we use it. But I have pictures of adults just loving it, and another person who, it was her mother's estate, so some of it was pretty darn cool. And so they use, because I love reusing pop cans, and actually I have to beg for them because I don't drink anything out of a can, and so, you know, I have to find somebody who does, and then, you know, my leaves for the trees. And so when I was communicating with Beth that, hey, let's do an art mobile, because that's one of the things that she does, and I don't know how it came up, and I said, well, I have pop cans, and she's like, pop can? Oh, okay, I don't think she saw my vision, and so some of the artists did indeed cut up cans into shapes, and it made it light and airy and floaty, and lots of them added really cool jewelry, or could take it apart and do beads, and it was mostly who had signed up was, you know, adults. And we often do things with Bear, so a lot of you know the group Bear with the kids. And so, you know, they asked to come, and they came late, and after, you know, them rounding them all up, and I pulled Beth aside, I said, you know, she was really teaching people how to do all the loops and the technical stuff. And it took a little, you know, like training with everybody, and I'm like, oh my God, now all these kids are coming. And so I said, well, you know, we should have some kids coming, and they're, you know, late, is that gonna be all right? She said, absolutely, if they come, they're doing it. And so it was really cool to have all those kids, you know, who came, and she modified it a little to make it work for them, and then to have the adults, and everybody really had a great time making mobiles, learning how to do that, and using pop cans and old jewelry. So that was really fun. But anyway, open air. If you follow them, they have lots of events, art talks. I went to the one on Flathead Lake, where they had several artists in residence, and so like Beth is doing her talk, but they had three different artists doing presentations there, and so everybody's always welcome wherever they're, you know, having these, you know, talks, and you know, it's more than talks. There's, you know, they do projects too, so you might see them posting, you know, one of their artists doing a workshop. So it's a great Facebook page or website to follow, to, you know, see more about what's happening in the arts around Western Montana. So thank you. We're really excited to be part of it.
Thank you.
So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I do, why I do it, and how I do it. So I live in Brooklyn, New York, and sometimes I look like this, or this if I'm working with glass. But mostly, this is my neighborhood. It's a kind of I don't know. It's a vibrant neighborhood. This is a market day, and so this is the kind of environment I go out in. And this is my preferred way of moving around my city with a bicycle and my camera. So one part of my practice is to go around and take pictures of things. I don't really know why I do this, but it seems very important to me to notice things. And there are quite a few artists in my neighborhood, so if I look carefully, I can find either like little stickers that they've made. Sometimes I find whole projects that are embroidered and hanging on strings. Sometimes they've straight up, changed the street signs. And I'll just show you some of what I see. This is some mural. We have a lot of rats in Brooklyn, and yeah, so. And we have a lot of different cultures. And so if you look, you can just see things in places. This one says, please do not run over anyone, even if they are slow and you are late. But this was on a sign. It looked like a perfectly good sign until I read it. And then I was like, what the heck, But, people have a sense of humor, and I feel like they're challenging you to pay attention, Pay attention. What are you seeing? Hand sanitizer in the subway. Yikes. So at about 2008, I started studying glass at a glass studio not far from my house called Urban Glass. And I started making jewelry and plates and wind catchers and these kinds of things, like this necklace or this one. And I got really interested in glass, and I just kept making things, and then I started selling them. I'm not really going to talk about not a lot about my glass experience today, but I just want to show you some of the things that I like to make. Oh, that. It's just part of glass. That's kind of the work I do. But I'm interested in waterfalls. I'm interested in the water staying clean. I'm interested in transparency and color. And after I had been working with glass for a while, this is art glass, which is kind of a category into itself. It's pretty expensive. But I started collecting glass from old windows and making work with them, because they give some of the coolest reflections, and they're very delicate. And so I started working with glass, and I just did that for years. And eventually I went to University of Hawaii to study glass sculpture, and I stayed there for 4 years. And then I came back to Brooklyn without a degree and a little bit sad. And I got a job at a local university, a community college actually. And I was working on a grant for the I don't know what they call it, psychological services. And as part of, I was doing other ESL work, but as being part of this department, I agreed to run a workshop weekly where students could just drop in and draw or paint. And so I would just be there with them. I would give them a prompt if they needed it. And we would just work together, and then we'd share what we made. And they found that was a good way for them to release their excess energy. And what I started to do was I started painting the backgrounds of these big pieces of cardboard. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I used that background as a basis for collage. And I thought, oh, this is so interesting. Do some more. So I did, and so this kind of started me with collage, and then I got into paper clay, and I started painting paper clay, and kind of creating these whole environments in a kind of platter-like situation. And then I said, okay, but if I want to keep doing this, I've got to figure out something I want to work on. And I realized that I could do small collages on envelopes. And in Park Slope, which is my neighborhood, people put things out on their stoops that they don't want. So people put out, 300 envelopes that they just can't use. And somebody will come and pick them up, somebody like me. So I started doing collages on envelopes. And what I found was that for me, I'm a kind of an intuitive artist. I can't think too much, I have my materials ready, I have my glue ready, and any other weird things I might want to stick on. Everything has to be ready, and then I just put things together. And if I like it, it gets glued on. I don't think about it too much, and when I'm done with one, I just do another, and I work until I'm almost tired, and then I clean up and start again the next day. If I stop to think, it's all over. Because I don't need to think to do this, I can feel what I like, I can feel what works, and thinking kind of stops me. So one day, I guess I'm a kind of a scavenger, aren't I? One day, I found some designer stationery. I did make a note about that. I found some designer stationery, and I thought, okay, well, that could be useful. And then I found some photographs by a pretty famous African photographer, and they look so good together. So I made some collages with that. And then I discovered Airbnb magazine, and that was just great. And I found I really liked putting African American people in places where you don't normally see them. So I started putting, people where I wanted them to be. So, and that has managed to keep my interest. Somewhere along the way, I became interested in making abstract paintings with acrylics. And I took a workshop online. I took a nice piece of cardboard like this, and I taped it off so I'd have like 9 squares of about 5 by 7. And the idea is to get a base layer down, usually white, and then just put the paint on however you feel. And so I started doing that, and then almost as soon as I started doing that, I started adding collage into the paintings, and I thought, well, this works for me. So, if you have 9 squares and you're working with teal, I just do 9.
May I ask a question? What's your studio like?
Well, it's my living room. And it's about like this. Yeah. And it was COVID, nobody was coming over, so I didn't worry about the dining room table. I just used it, and then I have another table that I also use. So, yeah. Yeah, don't think too much. Get a base layer down, and then just go. And that has been the basis of my practice. And so this is an example of the setup. I would have taped all of these apart and then just kind of moved across the cardboard. Then I...
So like concurrently, are you also doing those
things too, or is this like, oh, you're not doing glass, so now you're doing this?
Yeah, I usually do one or the other. Yeah, I can't do them both at the same time. And then last year I got into the bead project, and this is my my get up for flame working beads, which requires eye protection, and it was also COVID, so a mask. And I started flame working, and I became obsessed with carrots. So I found I could make them really expressive by doing things with the fronds and with the body of the carrot. They can get a personality, and so I made a lot of them. And that was really fun. And, but I also wanted to think about some of the things that I came across during my travels. And one of the things that I found while I was in Kuwait was they serve green coffee, like roasted green coffee beans in these teeny tiny tumblers. And it's a great honor to be served this green coffee. And when you're done, if you want more, you shake your cup like this, or if you're finished, you just turn your cup upside down and put it on the tray. And there's a whole ritual to this. And so it started me thinking about the coffee beans we have here, the coffee beans they have there. And so I made little coffee bean pins. I don't know. But one of the things I did realize about beads is that I didn't very much like the shiny bead. So I started experimenting with sandblasting the coating off the beads to make it a little more edgy. The bead isn't protected because you're taking off the shiny coating, so it can darken with the oils on your skin, but I just find it so fascinating. So I worked with sandblasting, and I wanted a kind of interplanetary feel for things. I was thinking about galaxies and planets. So then I had a whole bunch of beads at the end, and I didn't want to go back to making jewelry. So I decided instead to make mobiles. And that way I could have this expression of the planets, and they move and do their thing. And I also discovered blowing hollow beads, which is a little bit like glass blowing, but at the torch. The torch is a small setup with oxygen and gas coming out of one small torch. But I found some hollow tubes, and I can blow hollow glass. There's a couple examples. And then after I was done with that, I went right back to doing collage. Which I just enjoy it so much. This is a series that I'm working on. Oh, wow. Okay, yeah. I found these Haitian freedom fighters who got their picture taken, and I colored them in, and then I put them in front of different backgrounds. So this is a piece of glass that is red, even though it looks yellow. It fires to red. Anyway, I put them in front of that. I put them in front of various pictures, other collages that I've made, and then I photographed them because I think they're just lovely.
How big is that?
This is, the figures are by 5 by 7, and the glass is, is huge. But it only exists as a picture. So these are some of my more recent works. And then when I came to Hamilton, I was trying to think about, what am I going to do here? And I had kind of been thinking about this, and I thought, well, I want to work with memory. So this is a picture of my father and I in Detroit, because I was born and raised in Detroit, in front of our house. And I realized that I had a lot of memories about my father. He was quite, I don't want to say, he kept his emotions under control, and he encouraged us to do the same. But so I have all of these different kinds of memories with him you know, trying to contain himself, and also being happy or being very, very sad. And I thought that I would work with that while I was here. So I now think of myself as a unreliable narrator, almost like a novelist, you know, because I have these memories, but I'm not trying to recreate the memory for you. I'm trying to give you the feeling, even though the details could change. So this was the first one in the series, which is over there, and there are there's one more. But I found being here gave me the space to really, you know, not have to worry about all the stuff I worry about in Brooklyn, and I could just let my imagination kind of go wild and you know, work in a way that I hadn't before. So that's what I'm doing. I'm also trying to think about space. There's just so much space here, and I love going outside. It's incredible. I mean, come to Brooklyn. Come visit me in Brooklyn, and you will see we are all like living on top of each other like rats. Rats? No. Yes, rats. I mean, we're very close together. There's, you know, just not that much separation. And then when you go outside, the buildings are very high, and you feel very, you know, encased in the city. And being here is completely different. So thank you, Open Air, and thank you, Barbara, for having me here, because it is incredible. I mean, you know, I don't think I'll be able to say how much this affects my practice. Yes?
How long have you been here?
I've been here for about 3 weeks, so I have another 2 weeks, almost 2 weeks, about 12 days left. Yeah.
How do the people here compare to Brooklyn?
Well, you know, you can find friendly people everywhere, and that's what I've done. The people here are extremely hospitable. When I was so bowled over by your hospitality, I kept telling Barbara, oh, you know, the people here are hospitable like the people in the Middle East, which may sound kind of odd, but the people in the Middle East are known for their hospitality, you know. I mean, they will really give you the shirt off their back. And that's what I found here. People have, you know, taken me in hand and taken me to places and parties and swimming and bought me bread and, you know, kept me company, take me out drinking. I mean, it's just craziness and just friendliness, you know, just friendliness, no shade, just, you know, how are you doing? What's going on? How can I help you? It's been incredible.
Good.
Beth, can we look at that last slide before this a little longer?
Yep. And it's also over there if you want to, somewhere. But yeah, so it's been amazing. I told my father I was coming to Montana. I said, oh, I got a residency in Montana. And he said, you're not really going to go there, are you? And I said, I absolutely am. But to be fair, he said the same thing about Kuwait. He was like, you're not going to go there, are you? And I was like, oh, yeah, I'm absolutely going to Kuwait. So, oh, my father. Any questions I can answer?
So I think you should tell them more about this painting. Is it hanging up? Go back, the one with your dad. I love the story. Tell them more.
Okay, so this is based on, it's not actually a memory, but it's an imagining that I had, like how my father might have felt knowing that his father was ill and was going to die. So that's why I made this painting. And I didn't want to do like a male pietà. That's just too weird. So I substituted flowers for a body and made him super sad, and but with some hope, you know. I think the eggs and the bunny are symbols of hope and renewal. So so that all is not lost. But I think it's a powerful thing to lose your father as a man, or as a woman, but particularly as a man. And so that's what this is about.
She was inspired by our black rabbits.
Oh yeah. Well, these are Hamilton rabbits. Yes, absolutely. I forgot to add that. They're everywhere here, and they have such attitude because they look at you like, what are you looking at? It's very Brooklyn, in fact, this kind of attitude. and so yeah, I included the Hamilton rabbit. Sure.
So you did that piece while you were here?
Yeah, all of these pieces I did everything that's in here I did while I was here.
So what are you going to be doing in Taipei for your 8 months?
So I got a Fulbright to train English teachers in Taipei, and I am going to be training English teachers, particularly at the university. They're changing to English as the language of instruction. So I will be doing that and, some form of my work there. Yeah.
At the beginning of the slideshow, you showed a scene in Brooklyn, and I was wondering what that monument was.
Oh, yeah, that monument, let's see. Oh, I don't know, I have to start it again. That monument is a war monument. I think it's World War II. And so it's a monument to the fallen soldiers in World War, not just soldiers, but everybody who participated in that war who did not come back. So that's our kind of, not really an Arc de Triomphe, but kind of our recognition that people fought and died in this war. And it's okay, so I live in Park Slope. This is called Grand Army Plaza, and that is the monument that makes it Grand Army Plaza, because it's in recognition of the people who fought and died.
I was curious about the emotional ride through the process of creating one of your pieces. In the first part of your talk, you had yourself wide open to whatever your pieces were, but some of these are very deliberate with an intent. So, there's an emotional ride in creating anything. So that's what I'm thinking about, is how extreme is that ride for you?
Well, I don't know how to answer that. I don't know how to answer that. I mean, some of the, okay, I can answer that. How extreme is it? It's pretty extreme, It really, a lot depends on how I'm feeling and what kind of materials I have, because usually I'm just like, ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta, done, ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta, and then I look at them the next day and I go, oh, this is what I've made. But as I kept doing it, I got certain kinds of, there's certain kinds of pictures I like to use. I like to use African American people. Sometimes I have like a civil rights calendar or something that shows, African Americans in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. Sometimes I'm using images from Airbnb, sometimes from Vogue magazine. So there's a huge difference in the kinds of materials that I use. And I think that emotional wave that you see is one that I go on depending on, how I'm feeling and, what I have to make with. Yeah,
So it's triggered by your materials?
I think the materials have a lot to do with it, but it's mostly how I feel. So I may not feel like working with like an airbrushed image from Vogue, right? And so I go find something grittier and something a little more earthy, if that's how I feel. If I'm feeling like, well, I don't need any people, I'm just gonna play with the colors and the textures, then I do that. I'm not really a trained artist. I went to art school, but I didn't finish, and I was studying glass sculpture. So all of these things that I do because I feel them, and I want to express something. So, and I don't have like a critical structure that I can talk about.
Yeah, I mean, going off that, I'm like very interested in how intuitive your making process is. And I like the way you describe it as you just know when to place the paper down when it feels right. And I'm curious, are you like an intuitive person in other parts of your life, or is your art persona?
I wouldn't, I use my intuition in other parts of my life. I wouldn't consider myself an intuitive person necessarily. But I think because of the way that I grew up, and, my family was very, you need to control your emotions. And so I find art allows me to express a lot of things that I, as a child was not encouraged to express, And I think, after so many years, my father just gave up on me because, if my grandma was dying and everybody was wearing big dark glasses, I was the one openly weeping, "Oh, grandma!" And I think after a while they just gave up trying to control me because I just wouldn't be controlled. So that's kind of what I'm doing here. I'm not controlling myself. Yeah.
So to follow up on this intuitive practice of yours, was this the first body of work that was more intentional?
Yes. Yes. Well, because I had time to actually think about things, and I had a couple of goals. I wanted to work bigger, so and I wanted to work with memory. So yeah, it's more intentional than what I've been doing in Brooklyn.
How did you find the process to have that kind of program? Did you find it limiting, or were you able to let your intuitive process kind of be within this intention?
Yeah, it's still there in the framework, and I mean that's what I was alluding to when I said I was an unreliable narrator, because I'm not trying to recreate my father being sad. I have never seen him like this, but I'm using my imagination, and then I'm still stopping when things look good, glue it down, or if I don't like it, scrape it off and sand it and do something else. So the intuitive process is still there, even within a framework, a structured framework. Yeah.
How many layers is on the one with your father?
They both actually are my father, in both pictures. But how many layers?
Not counting the ones you scraped off.
I understand some of them, so.
Around two, one or two for that. Yeah. The flowers get a little complicated. That's like maybe 3 or 4 because, it was hard to get those flowers right. So between 2 and 4.
When you were doing your glass work, you had to have kilns, right?
Yeah, I have a kiln in my living room, which is why you're not coming to dinner, because I have a kiln in my living room.
How many layers did that involve? It looks like there were
On the glass.
on the glass.
It depends. For like art glass, you generally want to use 2 3-millimeter layers. The glass wants to be about 6 millimeters thick, so you melt it, and the glass evens itself out in the kiln. So yes, 6 millimeters. But with the window glass, which is a really different composition of glass, it needs high heat for a short period of time, so it does not get all scratchy and devitrified. So I could make a 1-layer bowl really delicate, like 3 millimeters, just 3 millimeters, and that's really fun. But I can't do that with art glass. You really need those 2 layers or more.
Okay, artists, Beth brought this in today, and I've never seen this product. Have any of you? Tell them about this.
So I brought a bunch of stuff with me when I came here, and one of them was this bleeding
Tissue paper.
tissue paper, which, gives up its
You know?
pigment if it's wet or if it encounters glue. So I've been fooling around with it. And the pieces here are not all done. I wanted to show you that.
But the orange is the tissue paper, and this is all
Yeah,
the colorant that
Yeah.
got pulled off of it.
Yeah.
The bleeding.
it's bleeding, exactly. So it's a lot of fun.
Give me some ideas.
We discovered it. I'm gonna see who's gonna be using it. I will.
You have a question, Gary?
Well, it's a tough one because it's hanging up over there.
Yeah, well, you can ask.
Well, that piece is so different from everything else, and it's so, I don't know, simple.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm working on these incredibly complex pieces that drive me crazy. So every once in a while I need to take a break and do something that is not complicated. So I was playing around with, I think those are watercolors, and then I put some pastels over them just to, try to think about space. Again, I'm thinking about space and what do you have to do on a
And the grayish one?
yeah, the gray one. Yeah, you got, what?
So great, I love it.
Okay, thank you. Space.
Talk in the back. They wanna know what you're talking about. Which one are you talking about?
That one and yes, yeah. Yeah.
We should show them all.
It's like talking about.
we can go.
Well, you can go and look.
That's what he was asking about. Pretty cool, actually.
Yeah.
So beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the time to try everything different, because, I don't have to take, I just don't, there are a whole bunch of things I don't have to worry about. So I'm just focused on doing all that I can.
Well, I guess we'll go and look.
Yeah, go look. Any?
Tissue paper.
Uh-huh.
You lay down tissue paper.
Yeah.
And then you let it, do you turn it so it?
You don't have to. What I do is I put some glue down, I cut a shape, and then I put it down and then I just glue it, I brush it, and the pigment will come off and kind of spread. It's kind of like a cheating watercolor, I could make a form with watercolor and then make another form and then make another form, or I could just cut out these shapes in bleeding tissue paper and, kind of encourage the colors to spread. What do I know? I'm just trying, I'm just playing,
Well, is bleeding tissue paper made for artists also?
Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I discovered it on Amazon because I needed to have trees that were blurred, so I thought bleeding tissue paper would give me that sensation. I still haven't made that piece yet, but I think that will give me the sensation. It's in there. No, nope. Get the bleeding tissue paper if you want to play.
Feel free to come on up and ask Beth as many questions as you want. And thank you so much for coming tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. We're all engrossed in the art.